Hey everyone, welcome back to Intuitive Vibes, Narc Survival 101. It's your girl Erica here. So first and foremost, if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, please be sure to go through some of my content just to see what the channel is about. And if you find it to be helpful or resourceful in any way, shape, or form, then please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time I either come on live or I put up another video. And of course, to all of my returning and existing subscribers, welcome back, guys. Now, as most of you know, I'm in pursuit towards my degree in psychology and becoming a prominent psychotherapist. And I wanted to make these mini audio clips titled Psych 101 because I not only wanted to create awareness for narcissistic, domestic, physical, or any type of abuse, but I wanted to help others break down the psychology behind it all. These clips are intended to help educate and assist others on how to create manageability within their lives and to help them ease their way through the process. I will be discussing studies from psychologists, physiologists, and therapists whose hard work and dedication have made it in today's textbooks and helped today's professionals in understanding and treating conditions that affect us as a whole. So guys, sit back, relax, and just listen in. There may be something I share that might stand out and actually help you to understand the who's, why's, where's, when's, and how's. So, now that you know what it's all about, let's just get right into it. Now in this clip, we're going to learn classical conditioning, learning by association. Simply put, this means learning something by association. Now, the study was made by a Russian physiologist by the name Ivan Pavalov. And in case anyone's wondering what physiology means, physiology is the way a living organism or a bodily part functions. Since this is psychology, we're looking more into the brain and how it functions. Now, Ivan Pavlov studied conditioned reflex with animals, well, dogs to be exact, in order to understand learning by association. Now, before I get into that, there are some key things I need to mention. And we, as well as people suffering PTSD, narcissist, or anyone on the spectrum with or even without a personality disorder, often have behaviors we perform based on association of certain stimuli. Let me explain. Now, a stimulus is any act, influence, or agent that creates response. There are two types of stimuli and two types of responses. Unconditioned stimulus is the first one. This is when a stimulus automatically triggers some type of response. So, for example, if pollen makes a person sneeze, then pollen is the unconditioned stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus will naturally lead to an unconditioned response, which is the second one. An unconditioned response is a natural response that's automatically triggered as a result of the unconditioned stimulus. So, if the pollen makes a person sneeze, the sneeze is the unconditioned response. The third one is conditioned stimulus. A neutral stimulus not related to the response becomes associated with an unconditioned stimulus, therefore triggering a conditioned response. And of course, with a conditioned stimulus, you have a conditioned response, which is a response that was learned from that once neutral stimulus. Now, guys, I know it sounds kind of confusing, so just stay with me. I'm going to give you an example. Now, when we flinch after hearing a loud sound, the sound triggered a natural response, making it an unconditioned stimulus, okay? And the flinching was an unconditioned response, because it was something done unconsciously as a result of that unconditioned stimulus. Now, if you repeatedly witness a certain type of movement happen at the same time as, or a little bit before, the loud noise occurred, for example, a person swinging their fist to slam it on a table, you might begin to associate that movement with the loud sound, flinching whenever you see the fist move or see a fist move. The movement of the fist, which is the conditioned stimulus, became associated with the unconditioned stimulus, the sound, and made you flinched. That's your conditioned response. So you associated the movement with the sound. Even though no sound came out, you were expecting that sound to happen and it didn't happen, but you've already associated that movement with that particular stimulus, therefore creating that conditioned response. Now, in this case, when we talk about unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response, how do we incorporate that with the kind of content that I put up? I'm going to give you guys an example. So let's say, for example, the unconditioned stimulus would be a gift from your partner or from a partner. Naturally, the unconditioned response to that would be gratitude, appreciation. Now, I'm going to give you 4 different scenarios, okay? With unconditioned stimulus, conditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned response. And you can pretty much figure out more or less where that would make sense for you, depending upon where you stand, be it if you are a codependent, be it if you have PTSD, be it if a narcissist is listening. The first case would be in the case of someone with PTSD. Now, someone with PTSD obviously has been conditioned with trauma. Now, if we put the unconditioned stimulus of a gift from a partner in the situation, they're going to give a conditioned response. And their conditioned response would be, what is the motive? Now, the reason this response is what is the motive is because they're associating it with a certain occurrence that happened in their past. For example, my ex bought me a car. I later found out they were having an affair. So with the partner giving them a gift, they've already, because they're conditioned with the trauma, they've already had a conditioned response because they're associating that gift from that partner with a situation that happened previously with someone different. And of course, if a stimulus, let's say infidelity, is placed in there, again, their conditioned response would be depression, self-harm, self-sabotage, and even possibly uncontrollable rage. Now, if we go into the next case of someone of a secure attachment, people of secure attachment are conditioned, but they're conditioned with unconditioned behaviors. In this case, conditioned with fairness, equality, and self-love. That's the natural way of doing things, guys. That's the natural way of having development in our lives. Now, the unconditioned stimulus of a gift from a partner would be given an unconditioned response, which is gratitude. And of course, the stimulus, which would be, let's say again, infidelity, the unconditioned response would be departure. No one would want to stick around with someone who commits infidelity or just goes out there and cheats on people. Unfortunately, you do have some people that do stay, but there is a difference between staying in a relationship filled with infidelity and forgiving someone for committing infidelity and giving it another try. There is a huge difference there, guys. Now, in the third case, this is the case of a codependent. A codependent is conditioned with insecurity and fear. So again, we're going to throw that unconditioned stimulus. They get a gift from a partner. Now, with a codependent, because we've already learned what codependents are about and how they manage to live their lives, you may get an unconditioned response, which is gratitude, but it's going to also intertwine with conditioned response. And the conditioned response is, again, associated with something that has transpired before. So in this case, the conditioned response would be, I must have done something to please this person because I remember my mom bought me gifts when I did things for her. Now, in this case, if the stimulus is infidelity, their conditioned response is self-blame due to their insecurities and fear of abandonment. It was my fault. If only I were better. Because they were conditioned to believe that they are incapable of sustaining self-love. And of course, they were conditioned to believe that because they were, maybe not physically, but they were emotionally abandoned at very, very young age. Now, moving on to the next one, in the case of a narcissist. Now, a narcissist is conditioned with egotism and lack of empathy. So let's throw in that unconditioned stimulus again, a gift from a partner. The conditioned response, because we know that narcissists are conditioned. Remember, I told you their behaviors are learned behaviors. The conditioned response is entitlement. We know that narcissists are extremely entitled. They feel entitled, not that they are, but they feel that they're entitled. Now, the prime example of the conditioned response would be, my last partner bought me tons of gifts to show I'm the best they'll ever have. Narcissists walk with that very, very big ego. They have this high self-importance, and they really feel that they are a gift from God, that they are the best that you will ever have. Now, if you throw in the stimulus of infidelity, of course, the conditioned response, because we know how narcissists are: rage, revenge, smear, and destroy. So in these 4 cases, you can kind of get the idea of what someone who suffers PTSD, someone who has a secure attachment, someone who is a codependent, and of course, someone who's a narcissist. You get the same type of stimulus provided to them, but you get so many different responses. And of course, these responses conditioned, majority of them are conditioned, because anyone with a secure attachment is already a leveled person. But any one of the other 3, you will receive conditioned response. You will provide conditioned response, because you are going to associate certain things within the dynamics with other experiences. In most cases, someone who has PTSD would probably be at the higher end of the spectrum, because someone who has PTSD is just so traumatically filled and pretty much on their toes when it comes to people and situations. Their responses are usually going to be completely conditioned, because it's with someone who has PTSD, it's such a confusing state for them that they really don't know true from false, real from fake. And because of the fact that they have experienced so much trauma, and someone who is suffering PTSD, especially someone who doesn't go for help to try to overcome that, or at least reduce the level of PTSD, their relationships and their actions and their behaviors can potentially be extremely self-sabotaging. So if there is anyone who does suffer from PTSD, I'd strongly advise that you definitely get help for that, because life is about living, and you're not living if you're holding on to that trauma. Now, guys, before I go, I wanted to just kind of give the experiments that Ivan Pavalov did make with dogs. And this was basically, the experiment in conducting the conditioned response experiment. So basically, before conditioning, what he did was he put out a plate of food. And of course, when the plate of food was put in front of the dog began to salivate. The dog began to, saliva was coming out. And obviously, the dog clearly saw the food, was hungry. It was very appealing to him. Now, when they removed the food and they replaced it with a bell, naturally, there was no salivation, because it's not edible. It's just a bell. So the dog pretty much stopped salivating. Now, during conditioning, what they did was they put the bell alongside the food, and the dog began to salivate, because he saw not only the bell, but he saw the food. So even though you have one thing that has absolutely nothing to do with the other, though both were in the dog's presence, he clearly started to salivate, and he clearly had shown that he was hungry. When they eventually removed the food and just left the bell, the dog continued to salivate because he already associated that bell with the food. So this is a result of conditioning. This was a conditioned response as a result of a conditioned stimulus. You understand? So believe it or not, we do this. We do often associate certain behaviors with certain types of stimulus. And again, it falls very, very heavily with, I would say, people with PTSD and probably codependents, because narcissists, we've learned that narcissists really associate more with, or I should say they're in tuned more with their abusers. But in this case, you can now understand if you suffer PTSD, if you are a codependent, or if you are a codependent in recovery, you can now understand that a lot of your behaviors are made based on association with certain types of actions, certain types of behaviors that have been made towards you. In this case, when it boils down to it, we really have to just sit for a second and say to ourselves, one thing has nothing to do with the other. So if you are a recovering codependent, if you are someone who's trying to get through PTSD, if you are trying to create new connections and you're trying to, open up a little more and possibly getting out there on a more sociable level, I would strongly advise that you take your time doing things, because self-sabotage is a result of it. We can self-sabotage and we can potentially harm relationships that can be good for us, but we're too busy associating certain behaviors with other incidents or other traumas that have happened in our lives. So that's kind of where I think a lot of us get, mixed up, and a lot of us tend to mess up when it boils down to ourselves, when it boils down to certain relationships that we create with others. But guys, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to. This is, some of the stuff that I'm learning and some of the things that I wanted to share with you guys. There is a lot more to it, way more to it, but I just kind of wanted to give you little bits and pieces and just to kind of help you understand it. So everything that I am putting in this audio clip is going to go in the description box, so you can kind of get an idea of, just a breakdown of everything, and hopefully, it stuck with some people, and hopefully it made sense for you guys. I'm still learning so much more in this, and I'm looking forward to when I, really, really get down to the nitty gritty and really put more into it when I go to school. So guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a little, couple of nuggets of knowledge. And if you have any questions, leave me a comment in the comments section. You already know how it goes. If you like the audio clip, and if it helped you with anything, anything in particular, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And of course, as always, guys, I will see you guys on Tuesday for the weekly live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got so much more to talk about, so I'm going to get back to it. But guys, have a great weekend. Hope you all enjoy. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay blessed, and of course, protect your peace, guys. Always protect it. Until next time, guys. Namaste.